I mean, the purpose of this opening session was really to set the scene, and I guess that's 4 presentations that have done that quite nicely. I personally notice a lot of parallels between the different perspectives, and I hope people welcome the positive noises that have been made through Peter's talk from the industry perspective and from the 3 different regulatory perspectives. And what struck me is that the regulatory perspectives are not just reactive, but are actually rather proactive and prospectively looking for places to use modelling and simulation to improve our decisions. So in terms of discussion for the next 5 or 10 minutes, and we won't extend further than that because of how long it takes to get a coffee in this place, we'll just take 5 or 10 minutes to take some high-level comments or questions, remembering that the purpose of this session is to set the scene. So if you feel that you have objectives for this meeting that are not addressed by those opening presentations, you might want to briefly raise those. Of course, if you have specific questions for the 4 presenters or additional points to make from the industry or the regulatory perspective, then please show your hand and I'll give you the mic. So Gerard, please, first.
Thank you, Rob. I simply decided not to be inhibited by your comment about the highly relevant questions. So I would be interested to know, and this question is primarily to Peter Milligan, how much in terms of modeling and simulation is done in drug companies, knowing that not everything that is being done in file is presented for marketing authorization application. What I mean is that there is probably tools being used by manufacturers that are not displayed. And I'm thinking of clinical trial simulation, one step forward into the modeling and simulation approach. So at what stage are we currently in the drug companies?
I don't think there's a kind of universal picture. I tried to give a vision in terms of, that I think we all agree with. I think different companies are utilizing modeling and simulations differently, but the motivation to try and improve the designs of particular studies and optimize the programs is there. And some companies will start it because they have different structures, et cetera, in different parts of their drug development and discovery cycles. But the motivation to improve designs using rational and informed approaches, I think, is consistent to all. I can tell you about Pfizer, but I can't be specific about other companies too.
I think what we know, Gerard and Peter, from my perspective, is that there's an awful lot more that goes on than the regulatory system sees. And over the course of this meeting, we might explore why that is, because it's not necessarily a criticism of the companies that the regulators don't get to see it. So we might explore a bit more about why over the course of the meeting. Perhaps not to extend too much now, but Peter, if you have another short comment, and then I'll take another question or comment from the floor.
I think that is an interesting point, because what you have here in terms of the industry representatives are the proponents and the contributors of this type of approach. That isn't the sum and substance of the industry people, and there's a lot of, as I said, structure and function and overheads for industry people to go through to indeed engage with the regulators, and that can sometimes be an impediment and sometimes can be help to grease the wheel. So it's very different.
And you've been polite enough to offer an explanation from the industry side, but I guess there's things to look at on the regulatory side as well.
That would not be my position.
No, quite right. Others, please. Other questions or comments? Yes, please.
I would like to ask the regulators who have been presenting whether they would be willing to enlarge their concept of risk to include the risk of waste, specifically the risk of waste of public resources, in terms of being very specific. approving drugs which are safe and efficacious, but useless from a health concept of the healthcare providers. And we know in the UK system that many drugs are being approved, and in the end, the National Health Service has a hell of a time to sort out what should be reimbursed and what should not be reimbursed. And I see a specific opportunity for modeling and simulation to sort out the risk of waste. And you may say this is not our remit, but perhaps one can discuss it still.
I certainly would say it's not our remit as a first reaction. I don't disagree with the sentiment behind your comment from a wider public health perspective, but obviously, and this is a nice point to be able to make at the start of a meeting like this as to what the regulators have in their power and what they don't, and we work to a European legislation which gives us a mandate to consider benefits and risks. It doesn't give us a mandate to consider public health in a broader sense as to which treatment is necessarily the best for any particular patient population or any particular member state to use, and it doesn't give us a mandate to consider cost of treatments.
In our American colleagues' presentation, there was an inkling of it, because he did consider the impact on healthcare cost in his presentation.
I think this was to demonstrate the value of the service, but please, Dr. Janta.
Yeah, correct, actually. So if you read that particular slide, the bottom says this was not a part of my review, because as Dr. Hemmings mentioned, the mandate even for American side is the safe and effective therapy. It is not the comparative effectiveness. Comparative effectiveness is in the research setting. You're right, probably we should be asking that, but I think we need to be also realistic. Also, industry has to be more realistic too, because several drugs, you can imagine, their principal first effects are minimal. And on top, if you want the new drug to be better, yeah, you can come up with different aspects, maybe dosing, safety, but that would be a moving standard for even industry. And trials that take 3 years, 4 years, it's very difficult to implement. But in concept, sure, modeling simulation can help, but you got to be realistic as to where and how it can help. I mean, it's a very general comment, I understand, but as Dr. Hemmings mentioned, it's very, very difficult to set an expectation that modeling and simulation will solve your problem on most of the drugs.
Dr. Stansky, please.
Yes, Don Stansky from Modeling and Simulation at Novartis. Terry Shepard, maybe you could give us some perspective of how the EMA and the whole European regulatory approach gains expertise in modeling and simulation. In other words, how do you rely upon expertise? Do you have it internally? Do you use external academic consultants? Where is the domain knowledge in the system right now?
So the domain knowledge is scattered across the system. As you probably saw, there are 27 member states that are involved in this. And so, for example, in the UK, I'm a pharmacokinetics assessor. In Sweden, there are, Monica, 10,
12 or 15.
Okay, 12. Fantastic.
Yeah.
12 or 15 assessors. In Germany, there are, I think, a couple. In France, there are a couple. But in fact, and in the Netherlands, there are quite a number as well. And so for us, what's quite a challenge, actually, is that this expertise is really spread out. We don't have one particular group that is involved in this. However, what we do have is organized on the European level are various working parties. There is a PK working party. They haven't so far looked in depth at modeling and simulation, but it certainly could be imagined that that would be part of their remit in the future, and that we could use that as a resource. There's also within the pediatric committee, there is a lot of expertise and a lot of involvement in looking at some of these particular applications of modeling and simulation.
But I think, Terry, perhaps to add a few words to that, in addition to the experts employed at national competent authorities, all national competent authorities have their own expert database, if you like, made up of academics. So we in the UK have a large number of senior university professionals whose expertise we can call on, and I'm sure that's true of other member states as well. The EMA have their own network as well, and the EMA provides an ideal forum to bring people together across Europe under the umbrella of the committees, whether it's CHMP or whether it's the paediatric committee, and bring all the experts into one place. And we've successfully done that across a number of both therapeutic areas and independent scientific disciplines. And what we'll need to consider going out of this workshop is what we need to do in terms of modelling and simulation. And it's back to my comment about the preparedness of the regulatory system for what we're going to see in the future. I think we can handle what we see at the moment, but if it changes, then what do we need to do? The experts are out there, and we need to work, we need to formulate a way of bringing them all together. And of course, as always, and there's no point hiding behind this, the regulatory system has to ensure its competence and its capacity. But it's always had to do that across any number of scientific issues over many years. I'll perhaps take one more comment before we break if there's a burning question. Yes, please.
Nicolas Frey from Modeling and Simulation. It's more a comment than a question. I enjoy very much the presentation this afternoon, and it gives me this impression that the health authority, and it was especially clear in your talk, Terry, that the health authority would like to see more modeling and simulation. And I think I can speak for most of the pharmacometricians in the industry in that room that we would like to do more as well. So it gives the impression that there is an issue somewhere. How come that if on both parties we are willing to see more modeling and simulation, we don't see more than that? And I think at least I can speak from my position in Hoffmann-La Roche. It's clear that we are not in the driver's seat. We are not centric in the decision process. We are there to help, to have the better design, to have them as informative as possible, but there is a need as well to change the mindset in the drug development, and I think the health authorities can help a lot to change this mindset and to ensure that also what we can do, those groups, those pharmacometric groups in the drug company, what they can do will be strongly supported and strongly advised by the health authority.
Thanks for the comment, and my response is not supposed to be glib, although it may sound so. But you've nicely summarised why we're here, I think.